Hello, and welcome to another World of UX podcast. I am your host, Darren Hood. Thanks for taking the time to join us today. Welcome, those of you listening for the first time. Welcome to the show. We are continuing the Talk Circuit series today. And as I was preparing and trying to decide what to do, I know that I don't have many other talks that are recorded that I can share. But I started to dig around a little bit, and I thought about a talk that I did. I've talked about domain knowledge on this show before and the difference between domain knowledge and general knowledge. And I did a talk for a conference last year for an unnamed source. I'm not going to say it's actually, you're going to see it in this video. And I went looking for that, and I'm like, you know what? That would be a good one to share for people to understand the difference between general knowledge and domain knowledge, to understand why you need to pursue domain knowledge and the affordances that come from having domain knowledge versus general knowledge. I also talked about how long it takes to develop domain knowledge. Well, as I went looking for this particular talk, I found out that the folks I delivered the talk for have deleted it. It is no longer available. But guess what? This talk was recorded, so I have it. This is my intellectual property, and I am going to share it. They decided to wipe it off the face of the earth, and I am going to share it again with the world. This was delivered a year ago at a conference where the topic of the talk was UX domain knowledge, the journey, importance, and value proposition. There are a lot of very hard truths that I present in this. It's amazing how people, they don't like what you say a lot of times. I deal with that a lot. They don't like what you say. They can't disprove it. So they try to make up things to make it seem like it's not accurate. It's amazing how sometimes people will like pretend that you said something that you didn't say. And then they raise this straw man battle against what you didn't say. And then they sell a bunch of people on how what you're presenting doesn't have any weight. You can't stop truth. You just can't. You can't stop truth. So I'm going to deliver this today. I'm going to share with you my talk for that conference that somebody thought that they just ran into the ground and made to disappear. That's what people do to seasoned UXers. That is part of the siege against UX that I talk about all the time. They try to wipe this thing out and try to pretend like it doesn't exist. Well, here it is. I own it. I have it. And I'm going to share this talk with you today. Ready for some hard truths? Ready to understand what pure UX is really about? Check out this upcoming video, and I'll see you at the end. Hello, everybody. It's morning here. So good morning from Southfield, Michigan in the United States, right outside of Detroit. Glad to be here today. Second year I've been here for this conference, and happy to be invited and happy to be able to share. But let's go ahead and dive in. And I'm in the junior track, so we're going to present some things along the junior track, but also setting your sights to things that are a bit higher. So ride with me as we present this info. And Q&A will come along in the Q&A segment later. We won't have time for Q&A here. So this either may be you right now, or it was you not that long ago. Let's get into the Wayback Machine a little bit and look at all of our journeys. So there's a time that you heard about UX, whatever it was called when you got involved. You heard about UX and you got intrigued. So you took the plunge, you dove in, you spent some time learning about it. Whatever that venue was, you completed some type of educational track, university, boot camp, self-taught, MOOCs, the courses online, the Coursera's and the edX and the different places, but you completed some type of an educational track, whatever that track might be. Your energy level off the charts, just ready to get going, can't wait to get a job. You want to get involved, but we run into a little bit of a wall in that there are, no matter what you learned, how you learned it, how much you learned, where you learned it, there's always a bunch of questions. And This is where a lot of people run into some issues in their growth as a UX professional, because first, a lot of people go through whatever educational track they went through and they begin to wonder, they begin to doubt themselves a little bit. Why do I have so many questions? Where do I go from here? What types of things should I be doing? I'm struggling to find a job. How do I find a job? A lot of people think they need to make sure to spiff up that portfolio. But really, there's a lot of it all is grounded in the fact that we have a lot of questions and the road is not always clear as we have those questions. And that's pretty much what I'm going to be addressing today in general. And I'm going to present a topic that you really don't hear about today. And my topic involves the 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 I'm sorry. So I'm used to recording a lot of these things, but a lot of the questions that we have, they involve the knowledge base and the topic I'm going to be speaking about, the knowledge base. And we think a lot about the general knowledge base, which I'm going to get into in a bit. I'm going to talk about in general, the difference between general knowledge and what's called domain knowledge. Again, we don't hear about this topic a lot. We really don't. We don't hear about it. And I want to put this topic on your radar. And I want to normalize the fact that you do have questions. There are going to be questions. Don't think less of yourself because you have questions. Don't look at yourself and be overly hard on yourself because you have questions. They are normal. And I'm hoping to answer some of those questions in the topics I'm going to present today. Now, this is going to bring about a question. What is UX? A lot of people wonder, what is UX? A lot of people, they see UX/UI and they think, okay, well, UX and UI, they're the same thing. They're not that much different than one another. And I beg to differ dramatically in that UX is comprised of several methods, methodologies, techniques, deliverables, and then other topics that directly impact UX, making them not really a one-off, but they're just related to the extent that it's important for us to know about some of these things because they help us grow. They help us navigate UX space. They help us understand what's going on. They help us to understand the journey. So we need to understand the UX journey. We need to understand the importance of UX. We need to understand how UX and that domain knowledge, the difference between domain knowledge and general knowledge, how that helps us with regard to the value proposition that we have, because nobody wants to deal with any discipline unless that discipline has a value proposition. So again, those are the things we're going to be talking to you about today. But I want people, I created this back in a rough, almost 10 years ago. I created this illustration. This is a later version of it. It's not the initial one, but it's the later version of it because it's important for people to know and understand what constitutes user experience. If somebody has a low level of personal UX maturity or a low perception of what UX is, it will cause you to have a lower trajectory because you'll only focus on certain things. You'll limit what your pursuit is when it comes to that knowledge, when it comes to your level of expertise, and that can create a problem. So just briefly, UX consists of what I like to stress as 4 major pillars of UX: heuristics and usability, information architecture, research, and interaction and interface design. I group those things together. UI, what people know as, that's interface design, or what's really accurately stated, and we're starting to do it again now, it's really GUI, graphical user interface. And if you do a search on graphical user interface, you're going to find a lot of historical information, a lot of older information that will actually help inform your practice as a UX professional. Do we do, as user professionals, GUI work or UI design? Yeah, we do, but it's supposed to be informed by all these other things that you see. So I just actually gave you an example of some domain knowledge because we have too much dedication to or seeing as a pinnacle of our development as UX professionals. We look at it from a general knowledge perspective. And when we look at general knowledge and place too much value on general knowledge, we're doing ourselves a gross disservice. We're creating an issue for ourselves there. We don't want to do that. So I'm going to challenge some people through this talk to set your sights higher. So again, this is UX, very broad. Somebody finally counted this. They said there's 250 things on this screen. I've been looking at it. I find it hard to believe, but somebody counted it, and that's what they said, 250. That's pretty broad, wouldn't you say? So if UX is that, where do we go from here? Especially if you're just starting out your journey. Again, me, almost 30 years. Somebody else, you may just have begun your journey. You might only be a few weeks, a few months in. Some people are 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 5 years in. And truth be told, and people will not tell you this, but you are entry level until you've been doing this work for 4 to 5 years because of how broad UX is. People are lowering the trajectory or the perception of what UX is and then telling people that they've arrived somewhere faster than what people like me are telling them. But no, that actually it's broad. And when we limit what UX is, when we lower that trajectory, when we lower the perception, then we also end up lowering at the same time the associated value proposition. Not a good thing. And we're going to show you why. And again, hope to challenge you to go broader than that. Now, last year when I spoke, I talked to people, and you can find this on YouTube, either through my channel or through Geekle's channel. You can find the information, you can find the presentation on the UX cycle of excellence is what I call it. It is a 7-step process for managing a person's career. Please know and understand, and I'm going to mention this again later, you never arrive. Again, almost 30 years, I'm still learning. There's always something new that comes up, whether it's a new form factor, whether it is some new types of experiences. AI, for example, it's not technically new. AI is not really new. Its application in UX and the breadth of which is being applied is relatively new. And so we're learning different ways to incorporate it into our work. So that's something else for me to learn. It's something else I'm going to go through a journey where I have general knowledge, where I'm getting things at a very high level. And then we eventually, as we really wrap our minds around it, as we really understand more about the different use cases that we can apply it to, when we learn how to really navigate it completely with regard to all the work and all the other things that we've been doing in the past, we graduate from from general knowledge to domain knowledge. So, and this is the type of thing we're going to be focusing on. Now, when I talked about the UX cycle of excellence last year, again, I talk about these 7 steps. Most notably, once you actually sort of start to make your way through these 7 steps, you start to you leave steps 1 and 2, and you just keep going through steps 3 through 7 for the remainder of your career. Does not change. After you've properly defined UX, which is basically finding the sweet spot, using all of those methodologies, and techniques to find the sweet spot between user needs, business needs, and constraints. There's your definition. If you never knew how to define UX, that's really what it is. It's not one thing. It's a lot of things, 250 things. Based on the information I got from the person who did the count, you're trying to decide which of those 250 things at any given time will help you in the work that you're doing from project to project to project to project. But that's what UX is. The foundational tenets, those are the 4 pillars: the usability and heuristics, information architecture, research, and interaction and interface design. Once you know what those things are, there's no reason to go back there. So you just spend the rest of your career cycling through steps 3 through 7. For the purpose of today's talk, however, we're focusing on steps 3, 4, and 5 because they revolve around trying to understand where you are, trying to make sure you understand where you need to grow, identifying your knowledge and skill gaps, and then constantly building towards excellence. And that's the one that's most critical to what we're talking about. So when you look at the journey, the importance, and the value prop associated with UX, it's really about going from that general knowledge, which I will explain in a moment, achieving that domain knowledge. And we need to understand, what is the journey? What is the importance? What is the value proposition? Now, I'm going to talk about each one of these things briefly, but I'm going to do them out of sequence. I know I just mentioned journey, importance, and value. We have to approach it out of sequence to help with the digestion of the information that I'm about to present. But one of the reasons we have this picture of this person climbing this mountain here is because, as was indirectly illustrated when you looked at the cycle, the UX cycle of excellence, is that you've got to be patient. A lot of people want to arrive. Some people will tell you, you can learn everything you need to know about UX in 6 months. I've seen people say you can learn everything you need to know about UX in 3 days, and they'll try to teach you, try to get you to enroll in their course. It's going to help you. No, no, that's not going to happen. You're not going to learn everything about UX. You can, however, build a foundation. You can build a foundation. Some people will say that some courses are a good start. I actually challenge and say, no, it depends. It depends on how that initial experience was structured, because if it's not structured properly, which we will also speak to here momentarily, you could be put in a position that will compromise your goals. There's another talk of mine you'll see out there on YouTube. It has to do with how you navigate misinformation. There was a day and time that there was no misinformation circulating in UX. Today there is. And so as you try to grow, as you try to manage your ascent, mountain ascent, as you try to manage your ascent in UX, if you take in anything that is not accurate, you're going to eventually have to unlearn that. And you could do someone, your team, yourself, your team, your company, your customers, your users, you could do them a gross disservice, because if you learn something that's not accurate and you implement that in your practice, that could have some really regretful consequences. I know there's a little redundant to say, but it's a bad thing. So we want to always try to make sure that we're learning the best thing as we grow. The hard thing about that is you don't have a filter. Quest for domain knowledge will help you develop a filter as you advance within the discipline. Again, this is a junior track, so we share those types of things. And then some people are having to double back and get this information and then reconstruct. You have to go back and tear certain things down if you learned anything that wasn't good. So there are two types of what I call active knowledge, because there's actually more than two types of knowledge, but there's two types of active knowledge. So there's general knowledge, and then there's domain knowledge, as we've already said. Now let's take a quick look at the difference between the two. General knowledge is high level only. It's high level. You have basic information. This is why a lot of people will say that, oh, if I go to this boot camp or if I take this course, it's a good start. I mentioned that I have 2 UX related master's degrees, right? A lot of people don't know I was actually self-taught. So a lot of the knowledge that I had early on was general. It was high level. It was the constant engagement that helped me to ascend to domain knowledge, which was eventually capped off by getting those degrees. But it was high level. So you have this high level knowledge. You know what something is. You recognize when you hear a term, you recognize what that term means. I mentioned AI. A lot of us have general knowledge when it comes to AI. We don't have domain knowledge. So there's a gap. As I mentioned about the UX cycle of excellence, there's a gap. So you want to recognize that gap, realize you need to get to work to close that gap, to fill that gap, and then you go on the journey. So that sort of indirectly addresses the journey, but we'll talk about that again in a bit. General knowledge consists of information that has been accumulated over time, as the example I just gave, through various media and sources, books, videos, going to conferences like this. You're obtaining, in a lot of instances with all the different talks that are taking place, you're gaining, in some cases, general knowledge. You're not getting domain knowledge through these presentations. You are getting a foundation that sets you on a path to obtain domain knowledge. And when a lot of people feel they've arrived, and when you feel you've arrived and you haven't, that's going to keep you from attaining domain knowledge. So you want to keep that in mind. General knowledge excludes specialized learning. When I mentioned getting those 2 UX related master's degrees, That was specialized learning. It was formalized. And some people say, yeah, like that class I went to online, that 3-week class. No, not necessarily. And again, we'll talk about that in a bit because every learning experience is not a viable learning experience. Everybody's saying that they're educating you. They're not really educating you. I didn't mention it. I'm getting a PhD in educational leadership, and I have 5 instructional design certifications. Very well versed. My knowledge about education is domain knowledge, and we'll talk to you shortly about what really constitutes a proper learning experience because I don't want you to be taken advantage of out there. You can and will. If there are certain things you don't know, we want to protect you from that. People say we're being gatekeepers. Gatekeeping is actually about quality advocacy, and gatekeeping is actually about protecting the people that are part of the domain. So when somebody is gatekeeping, they're actually doing you a service. They're actually helping you out. I don't want to see you being taken advantage of. I don't want to see you be preyed upon by people, by predators who are out there. Yes, unfortunately, there are a lot of predators, and they're not going to do you good. It's going to sound good. It's going to look good. But as that money's leaving your pocket or time is leaving your life, you could be taken advantage of. We don't want to see that happen. So specialized learning is something that's beyond general knowledge. That can only be obtained with extensive training and information confined to a single medium. So you actually remember that illustration I showed you, 250 things. Each one of those things, each one of those topics is something that an individual has to pursue in order to obtain domain knowledge. Those are single mediums. Each topic is a single medium, and you have to spend time learning about each one in order to obtain the domain knowledge, and that's when you can navigate. But again, we'll address those things as we go forward here. And this definition is right straight from Wikipedia. Nothing fancy there. Domain knowledge, and we'll just go over all of these here at once. Domain knowledge is granular, very detail-oriented. It's also very broad. If you only have what you feel are domain knowledge about 3 and 4 topics associated with UX, remember, there's 250 out there at least, because that illustration is actually about to update. It's about to grow. There's another 247 topics for you to learn about in order to really broaden your perspective and your expertise in this discipline. Domain knowledge is specific. It's specific to a field or in contrast to general knowledge. So again, specific discipline or a field. It's what do you know about information architecture? Let me illustrate this better. Information architecture, what do you know about that? I have seen and know about people that know that they don't know very much about heuristics. And then there's a lot of subtopics. That's what those little elements around each pillar was. Little subtopics associated with heuristics. So as you learn more about heuristics, each one of those elements is a part of that pillar that will help you to become stronger, more knowledge-oriented about each one of those pillars. It should also be noted that this term is also used in reference to a more general discipline. So domain knowledge, a lot of times, you look at each one of those, again, each one of those topics. I saw one example that I'll mention that I think was pretty good. They said, when you look at the medical field, you have general practitioners, but then you have someone who's a heart specialist. That heart specialist doesn't know a lot about the general practice, but they've chosen to specialize. Now, the reason that I chose that example to share is that, and people may not know this, there were no specializations in UX prior to 2011 or so. To have people engage from a specialist perspective to just specialize in research was something that didn't happen before then. Prior to 2011, if you were a UX practitioner, you did everything. You did design and you did research. And I come across a lot of people today who will say, well, I'm not a good designer, but I do like research, and they choose to go that way. Okay, that's fine. Please don't understand. And one of my peers in the discipline on my podcast shared an interesting metaphor about that a lot of times it used the medical example, the same medical metaphor, that it's good that we have specialists because that will help people when you have a more specialized need. That is true. But I also retorted with a contrast on that. If you go to a small town, you will not see specialists. They don't have room for a bunch of specializations. So please know and understand that the UX practices will vary based on the organization's need, an organization's size, and an organization's budget. So please know and understand that that's critical to understand that metaphor. Also, you are a better specialist if you understand things from a broader perspective. So there's something else to help us understand that having a general broad knowledge about UX is helpful, even if you get off into domain knowledge later and become a specialist. But also there is UX broad domain knowledge, which we all had to have prior to 2011. So there's something good for everybody to know there. You have the example here about a person who's a software engineer who has general knowledge of computer programming as well as domain knowledge about developing programs for a particular industry. So we just sort of illustrated that with the other things that we brought up, but just important to know. So we understand the difference again between domain knowledge and general knowledge, and we're not demonizing general knowledge, but it should be a foundation to domain knowledge. So let's keep that in mind. When it comes to the importance, business impact and team maturity are key here. Higher levels of domain knowledge will empower a person or a team to navigate and manage more use cases and meet more needs for that team. So there's a lot more impact that you can get when it comes to or cause or drive when it comes to domain knowledge than general knowledge. The more domain knowledge a person has, the more they can impact that UX team's practice. If you have a team, you have a collective domain knowledge with that team. And when it's narrow, then your scope, your impact is narrow. When it's broad, your scope of impact is broad. The higher levels of domain knowledge that you have, it will optimize that team's internal brand. Yes, your team has a brand. People are viewing your team collectively, and it's going to be based on what that domain knowledge is of that team. Heightened domain knowledge facilitates internal UX mentoring. This is something I've talked about on my podcast from time to time. There should actually not be, there could be, there shouldn't be as many, the need, let me rephrase it. Let me say it this way. You should be able to get mentoring from within your UX teams. You should not have to go outside of that team to get mentoring. One of the reasons that we have that is because the domain knowledge on teams is very low. The domain knowledge of a lot of people leading UX teams is usually very low. So people are having to go outside of their teams to get mentoring. Shouldn't be the case. I mentor everywhere I work. I mentor. There's always something to help somebody grow with. There's always some brand to help drive. There's always something to do. But a lot of teams don't have people who've been doing UX for longer than X amount of time. So they end up having to go to the different venues to get mentoring. That shouldn't be, folks. I'm just here to tell you that. Somebody might not like the fact I said that, but it's true. So that's what I do. The more domain knowledge an individual team has, the more indisposable you are. Asterisk. That depends upon the organizational UX maturity levels. If the maturity level is high, you're indispensable. If the maturity level is low, then yes. And we know about all the layoffs and things like that have happened over the last couple of years or so. That is usually because there's a low UX maturity level tied into that. I know there's a lot of things, a lot of contributing factors, but that's one of the biggest ones because UX professionals are indispensable. Also, when you have a lot of specializations, that increases headcount, it increases budget. And a lot of times that actually dilutes the impact of the team. Just so you're aware, and then that results in the same. But basically speaking, when the maturity level is high, when UX maturity is high, then the practitioners are indispensable. You can't get rid of that because of the impact we have upon the company. The value prop. Domain knowledge is required in order to achieve excellence. If you do not have the lower domain knowledge you have, or when your knowledge level is more narrow, then excellence is going to be harder to achieve, or just it is not going to be achievable. Domain knowledge is basically comprised of, I mentioned there's other types of knowledge. It's comprised of three types of knowledge. Declarative knowledge, which is a what, that's that general information. And that is again, is general knowledge. The procedural knowledge, however, is the how. Okay, here's the information. How do we apply it? Here's the general knowledge. How do we apply it? And then the conditional knowledge is the when and the where. When you take all of these things and you put them together, that's what domain knowledge affords someone. When a person has general knowledge, all they have is the what. They don't have the how, they don't have the when and the where. And so domain knowledge is critical for that reason. It is exclusive to experts. Exclusive to experts. People who are not experts do not have domain knowledge. It's specific to a discipline. So it's applicable to specific topics. So, and it's broad, but that broad, if it's really domain knowledge, it's because that person is able to go to those different topics and they can address those and they can do the what, the how, and the when and the where, even the why, which we don't mention, but it's a part of that. That's where domain knowledge comes into play. It empowers practitioners to adapt. It empowers practitioners to adapt. You can change I was working at a design agency when the iPhone came out. We had to pivot immediately and learn how to apply what we knew to this new form factor. And we did it. And we started winning awards and everything right away because we came to learn that when you have general knowledge and you start to go in depth with that knowledge and you transition to domain knowledge, you learn that UX is actually pervasive, that once you learn it, it's applicable no matter what the new form factor is. And so, but if your knowledge level is too high, you're at that only general knowledge, you won't be able to pivot. So it affords that ability to adapt. Domain knowledge provides a level of problem-solving ability. That's really what we're doing. That's really what design is. We talked about the definition of UX. Design is really problem-solving. Really what design is all about. And so domain knowledge affords the ability to solve problems that people who have lower levels of knowledge simply do not possess. They'll just sit there and scratch their head. And then they'll get with other people who don't know, and they'll all collectively get there and scratch their heads. Okay, problem's not solved. The ability to act is afforded to you through domain knowledge. It's needed to optimize synthesis. What is synthesis? Well, synthesis, when you get data from research, you analyze it, right? But understanding what to do because of what that data is telling you, that is synthesis. And domain knowledge affords synthesis. It empowers synthesis. It also serves as the source of driving UX maturity. You cannot achieve personal or organizational UX maturity without domain knowledge. It simply is not doable. Now, when it comes to the journey, how do you get it? Okay, I hear you, Darren. I hear all this stuff. How do I actually achieve
Darren,
domain
I'm
knowledge?
so sorry to interrupt you, but we are like 5 minutes out of speaking slots, so usually about like 5 minutes to wrap it up, if it's okay.
Almost. Yep. Almost there.
Thanks. Thank
Yep. You have to engage in formal education. You expose yourself to complete learning experiences. That's presentation, application, and feedback. You need opportunities to practice, and you need feedback from an informed practitioner, instructor. Interacting with real discipline experts, not people who say they are, people who really are. You have to develop an understanding of how UX integrates into business. That's something that when you have general knowledge, you don't know, can't do. Building and faithfully utilize what we call a personalized learning network, where you document all your sources for learning and frequently visit them and apply what you learn. You apply as you go, and then simply you repeat. So the picture we have here, general knowledge, it's the tip of an iceberg. It looks big. It looks solid. It is big. It is solid. But the part that's beneath the surface is the part that's bigger. More important, it's the thing that's holding up everything else that's going on there. So domain knowledge is basically much bigger. So, and we have to quest. There's a quest for that. We have to pursue it. So UX, pretty big, 250 elements, right? The journey is long. There's a lot to pursue, a lot of things to go after. But in closing, general knowledge, it's a pain in passing, folks. Anyone can have general knowledge. We've had stakeholders that will tell you what they know. When people say, hey, Google does it like this, they're throwing general knowledge at you. but that's not how we achieve our goals. So beware of that. Domain knowledge, or DK, is to general knowledge what qualitative research is to quantitative. It only results from deliberate engagement. You have to actually pursue domain knowledge. Only those with domain knowledge can navigate UX space effectively and with minimal risk or error. Practitioners with higher domain knowledge have greater potential to drive UX success for their teams. It's critical to know and understand that a person cannot be a thought leader. A lot of people say they are, but they can't be a thought leader until they achieve certain levels of domain knowledge. And then lastly, those in the discipline, said this earlier, we say it again, we never arrive. So it's imperative that you commit to lifelong learning. If you're a true junior, know that this is just the beginning. You'll be 20 some odd years from now, you'll be me, going back and looking at what you learned, but still trying to learn other things. Well, that's it. A lot of hard truths. I hope folks are able to take everything in. I hope you enjoyed this talk from the Unnamed Conference, which of course you see if you look at the video, but a lot of hard truths, folks. And if you really want to be at the top of your game as a UX professional, domain knowledge is the only way to go. You will not have a lot of domain knowledge when you first get started. There was a day that I didn't have any domain knowledge, but that's the path that we need to follow. That's the path we need to take. Will bring wins or generate wins for ourselves, for our teams, for our customers, for our business, and for the discipline at large. I just keep saying this and I just can't say it enough. So again, I hope you enjoyed it, and share it. Share the show with your friends, share this talk with your friends, get the word out there, folks. Pure UX is the way to go. And speaking of Pure UX, as we close out, promoting some of the merchandise on the Kaizen UX website, or Kaizen Tees website, I should say. Check out the I Heart Pure UX polo shirt. This is relatively new on the Kaizen Tees website. Really comfortable. I got one, not saying that just because I have one, just love it. It's really comfortable. It's a fun way to get the word out with regard to what UX is really about. And to those of you who do support, and thank you for those who do. If you partake of this, you buy the merchandise, it does help support the work that we're doing here for the World of UX podcast and for Kaizen UX. So, but that's it, folks. That's all the time we have for today. We're going to go ahead and wrap up here. So until next time, this is Darren Hood, the host of the World of UX, signing off. Happy UXing, everybody.